I filmed this stag wallowing about 20 years ago, so I apologise in advance for the quality of the footage. The video camera that I had at the time didn't have the quality image stabilisers that the cameras of today have. Added to this, the light was very poor due to being an overcast day and the time around 5 p.m. in mid-September when I started filming. The first indicator of the stag approaching was when the birds went quiet, followed by the snapping of a few twigs. From my elevated position, I could make out the body shape of the deer through the dogwood and could see its lower legs clearly. It was facing downhill towards the wallow and stood motionless for what seemed like an hour, but was probably only about 10 minutes. I'm not sure if his caution was due to the squawking of a cockatoo or if there'd been another stag in the wallow before him that made him very wary, but he certainly took his time before entering. I personally rate a wallow as one of the best areas to start your hunt from in the morning, as a lot can be learned from checking out the area around them. I like to stake out a wallow before dawn and sit off it waiting for it to get light. I usually wait for at least 2 hours before moving in to check it out as to when it was last used. I have found on a number of occasions that the wallow had been used overnight before I got there, and I've been able to track and follow the mud trail to where the stag was bedded. Whilst wallows don't receive the amount of consistent attention as a feeding area does, they are a prime location to catch a stag unaware of your presence. A wallow is one of the few areas that you can go back to that you'll guarantee the stag will revisit at some point in time. A wallow can only be made where there is a suitable environment for it to exist, as opposed to a rub tree or a scrape that can be made almost anywhere. Finding old rub trees scattered throughout the bush is common, as some are only rubbed once and never ever used again. The right type of soil, along with the ability to hold and collect moisture, determines where a wallow can be made, and in much of the habitat that sambar live in there will be none due to the gravelly soil and the rocky terrain. Finding one and revisiting it regularly can give you a good indication as to the presence of a stag or stags. 20-something years ago, before the advent of trail cameras with the ability to take video footage, I decided to do a study of sambar behaviour in and around wallows. So with the help of a mate who had a good electronics background, we constructed a production VHS camera in a waterproof box powered by a 12-volt truck battery and solar panels. A lot of the footage and data that I collected over a continuous 23-month period is contained in the second DV that I made called Sambar Safari Volume 2. I've used the information gathered from this footage to successfully target and take several good stags, including the one that's actually in this video. My cameras have shown that during daylight hours, hinds and young will visit a wallow at a ratio of 8 to 1 stag. In the hours of darkness, it swings in the favour of the stags at a ratio of 2.5 to 1. Whilst hinds do not wallow, they do visit the area more frequently than stags during the day. This information alone has enabled me to take numerous hinds as meat animals, as they are more likely to visit a wallow during daylight hours. There is no clear pattern as to when a deer will visit a wallow, although if you are after a stag, the best time to be sitting on a wallow are from the first 2 hours of daylight and again for the last 2 hours before dark. I've found that if a wallow has been used in the morning, quite often the same stag will frequent that wallow again before coming out in the evening. For a deer, wallows are all about finding scent and leaving scent. Deer not only deposit their own scent, but they are able to detect who else has been visiting the wallow and how long ago. This also includes humans, of course. For sambar, their highly sensitive sense of smell is the key to their survival. Nowhere is this better displayed than in and around a wallow. Sambar will approach a wallow from downwind and will usually spend considerable time wind scenting and checking out the scene from a distance before entering the wallow. I have observed many stags walking around the perimeter of a wallow, sniffing the ground and the vegetation that is coated in mud from the previous user. Being seated up the tree in my climbing tree stand made me quite visible to the birds, especially with my fluoro orange hat on. The cockatoos obviously see colour, and they pinpointed me fairly quickly and gave me a bit of a hard time for a while. Hinds will bring their young to the wallow to drink and feed on the waterweed and the sedge around the perimeter. It's not uncommon to have 3 or 4 deer visit the wallow at the same time. The most I've seen is 7. This group consisted of 2 mature hinds and their calves, a yearling hind and a spiker, and a stag with 27-inch antlers. It is my opinion that scent is the key method that Sambar used to communicate with. This is why I believe that the knowledge of a wallow and how to use this is very important from a hunter's perspective. Having found a good wallow, the next step is working out how the best way is to hunt it. Depending on where the wallow is located will have a major influence on when and how you approach it. Throughout my experience, a good wallow that is located close to farmland, a road or an open clear country is less likely to be visited during daylight hours, but may be heavily used in hours of darkness. Whereas a wallow that is a good distance, say half a kilometre or more into the bush, will be more likely to see deer visit it during times of shooting light. For this reason, I would recommend sitting at what I term a bush wallow, which would be better to stake out than an open wallow. Whilst an open wallow may show plenty of sign of deer activity, it is more likely to be being used during hours of darkness. Rain also washes the scent of deer from the wallow, so after it has rained heavily is a good time to do a stakeout. When I do a stakeout on a wallow, I avoid the temptation to go in and have a closer look so as not to foul up the area with my scent. I sit off at a pre-chosen vantage point and if possible check out the wallow from a distance with my binoculars. In some ways it is better if the wallow hasn't been used recently, as this may mean that it's about to be used very, very soon. At the wallows that I stake out on a regular basis, I have selected 4 seating positions to allow for time of day, that's morning and evening, and also for wind direction. There are 3 wallows in a row in this system where this stag is wallowing. They're very much communal wallows, as I've seen other deer use them on a regular basis as well. Quite often I've been there and there's been a spiky or a yearling stag hanging around there, but it's a common place for deer to meet and congregate, and it's a good system in so much as that it's got a permanent spring at the head, and it's very, very rarely, I've only ever seen it dry up once in probably 25 years. After videoing this stag for 9 minutes, I decided I was going to take him. So I waited till he exited the last wallow and started to climb the bank on the other side. When he got to the top, I decided to take a shot, and I got a good clear shot through the shoulders. Only problem was that when he rolled back down the hill, he ended up in the wallow again. So it was by far the messiest caping out job that I've ever done. ended up covered in mud from head to toe, but I was more than happy with the quite respectable trophy that he was. The meat was a bit ordinary and took a fair bit of work cleaning up, but it was certainly a good time to take a stag. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching this wallowing stag sequence. So till next time, safe hunting.